When I saw the Game of the Year nominations for 2022, there was one that really caught my eye. A Plague Tale Requiem. I was like, yeah right, why is that in there? I had heard of the first game, A Plague Tale Innocence, before, but it never really interested me. I knew it was some story about a brother and sister set during a plague, and that was about it. Well, I decided to give it a try. And let me just say, it was one of the greatest decisions I have ever made in my gaming life. The trophies for A Plague Tale really aren't anything difficult. Playing through the game alone gets you a bunch of them, and all you really have to worry about doing is a few miscellaneous trophies and some easy tasks, as well as picking up some collectibles along the way. For that reason, I'm going to be focusing on the trophies a little bit less and the story a little bit more. Also, this is going to contain heavy spoilers for both A Plague Tale Innocence and Requiem. I highly recommend you go and play at least the first game before you come here. I promise you won't be disappointed. Also, I think it's free if you have PlayStation Premium, so it's worth a shot. One last thing before we start. I don't have very many great clips from my playthrough of these games. Like I said before, this is a learning process for me. I plan on recording the next few videos in a very different style, which should help me out a bunch. I just wanted to give you a heads up that sometimes my voiceover may not match what you're actually seeing. Alright, let's start from the beginning. This is set in the mid-1300s in France. You play as Amicia de Rune, a noble girl that lives with her father, mother, and little brother named Hugo. One day, you and your father are out hunting when your dog is introduced to the circle of life. You and your father run back home to tell everyone to stay out of the forest when suddenly the Inquisition shows up. You don't know why they're there, but you do get to see your father and servants get killed. This is actually where an important plot point comes in. Your mother Beatrice has been keeping Hugo sheltered in the house until they can find a cure for his illness. She tells you and Hugo to escape while she stays behind. Amicia and Hugo make their way to a village where they learn of the Black Plague being spread by rats. They need to make their way to an alchemist named Laurentis that lives on a farm not far from you. When you get there, you learn that he is also sick with the plague. But you meet one of the best characters in the game, Lucas. He's been living with Laurentis as his apprentice for most of his life. Lucas then goes on to explain that Hugo has something called the Prima Macula in his blood. Beatrice and Laurentis have been trying to cure it, but haven't been able to find a way to do so. That's why the Inquisition was at your home earlier, to capture Hugo and use his blood for its powers. Along the way, you meet two sibling thieves named Melly and Arthur. Arthur is captured by the English as Amicia, Hugo, Lucas, and Melly make their way to Chateau d'Ambrage. I don't know if I'm saying that right. This is your home for the next little while. Melly goes to find and rescue her brother, while Amicia goes to the university to get a book for Lucas that may help with the cure. While there, you meet a blacksmith named Roderick. He tags along and you make your way back. Melly and Arthur arrive at the castle and reveal that your mother is still alive and is being tortured for information. Hugo overhears this and gets angry. His symptoms heighten with strong emotions. Amicia and Lucas decide to go and find Beatrice's hidden alchemist lab to hopefully find some more research. They ultimately get an elixir that helps lessen some of his symptoms. Hugo then decides to run away in the middle of the night to go find his mother. This leads to Amicia having a very cool and interesting dream.
Hugo, is that you? Someone's coming. It's me, Hugo. Is that you? Don't move. I'm coming. Get out of my way. Let me through. Hugo.
What are you doing?
Come here. No.
This is
No,
no
Nicholas.
place for a
Don't
child.
touch him. No.
Where is your
Hugo.
sister?
Run. Get away from me.
There is no one there. Come. Let us go. Let us go and see.
Hugo ultimately makes his way through the entire castle and finds his mother. That is when she reveals to him that the macula gives him the ability to control the rats. Him and his mother attempt to escape the castle, but are captured again. The big bad Vitalis decides to take Hugo in to try to harness his powers even further, as well as inject Hugo's blood into his own. A month goes by, and Amicia and the crew are still living at the Chateau d'Ambrage, without any knowledge of where Hugo went. That night, the rats were worse than ever. Suddenly, Hugo and the lead knight enter the castle. Hugo's still angry at Amicia for not telling him that his mother was indeed still alive. so he was easily manipulated to turn against Amicia. Ultimately, she's able to change Hugo's mind and get him back to normal while they kill the knight. Oh, and Arthur died. This is the moment that leads to the grand finale of the game. Amicia, Hugo, Millie, and Roderick decide to storm the castle to kill Vitalis. Roderick dies while protecting the others, and Amicia and Hugo make their way to Vitalis. Upon arrival, it is discovered that he has bred a shit ton of white rats that he's able to control. There's an epic battle between Vitalis and Amicia and Hugo until Vitalis is defeated. The rats and the plague have now disappeared and everyone's happy again, yay! Except there's a second game. Before I move on to Requiem, I want to touch on the gameplay of Innocence because it truly is phenomenal. The rats are not able to go into the light, so a good portion of the game deals with light-based puzzles and finding your way around the rats. There are different ammo types that Amicia can craft for her sling, which is your one and only weapon in this game. You can kill enemies that have no armor on with rocks from your sling. Others you have to find unique ways to kill, such as putting the light on their torch out so that rats swarm them. It's very fun and super rewarding. Anyway, time to move on to the story of Requiem. I wasn't originally planning on playing both of these games, but I really couldn't wait. As soon as I finished the first game, I went and bought the second one immediately. I was so excited to see where the story went and what adventures Amicia and Hugo would get into. The game certainly doesn't disappoint. It's a great way to continue and end the story of the De Runes. Requiem takes place just 6 months after the first game. Lucas has become the apprentice of Beatrice, Amicia and Hugo have been chillin', and they live in a safe enough area. Everything seems good, right? Well, it is, until Amicia and Hugo decide to piss off some beekeepers that are not afraid to kill on sight. You fall into the beekeeper's domain at some point, and it happens to be at the same time that thieves are being caught and slaughtered. They assume that you're also one of the thieves and chase you through the area. Eventually, you come across a little boy being beaten, and Hugo decides that his 5-year-old ass can stop it. This leads to Amicia getting choked out and Hugo getting upset. And what happens when Hugo gets upset? The rats come out. Hugo uses his powers to kill the boys and then passes out. It cuts to Amicia, Hugo, Lucas, and Beatrice on a horse carriage. Amicia tries to gaslight Hugo by saying none of that really happened. I don't know why they love lying to this poor little kid. Anyway, the beekeepers catch up to them, and you learn how to sneak, use your sling, and some other stuff that the first game already taught you. You eventually catch up with the others and make your way to a cool little town with a market. This is where Amicia and Lucas are sent to find an alchemist named Vidon. He's with a group called the Order, which apparently have been studying the macula for centuries. If anyone can help cure Hugo, it would be him. While looking for him, Amicia and Lucas go through the Colosseum, which is off limits. They quickly find out why, as there's been an outbreak of the Black Plague, and this is where they're sending the poor people to die. You find Vidon and lead his douchebag ass back to Hugo, who's sick at home. Hugo doesn't trust him and keeps telling you about the dream he's having about an island with a bird.
Don't hurt me.
He believes that this island is where he can find the cure. Nobody believes him, except for Amicia, and Vidon abuses him. Vidon then sends you to find a man named Joseph, who has a boat and can take them to Marseille. This is where the Order is headquartered. Amicia and Hugo don't like the idea of it, but Lucas and Beatrice trust Vidon enough. Upon arriving at Joseph's boat, rats start destroying the town. Vidon was experimenting a bit too much on Hugo and it pissed him off. Amicia runs back, watches Vidon die, grabs Hugo and Beatrice and goes back to the boat. They get into some boat troubles along the way, which leads to a few puzzles and the introduction of a new weapon type, the crossbow. This thing is super cool and can be used to kill enemies with helmets on. You're chased down and beaten by Arnaud, a former disgraced knight. And then you say goodbye to your mother and Lucas. They're drifting away on a boat, and Amicia and Hugo decide to stay behind and look for an island in Hugo's dream. Cut forward, and Arnaud ends up being a good guy, and he knows where the island in the dream is. It's a small island named Lacuna. They trust Arnaud and follow him to a band of smugglers to find his old friend named Sophia, who has a boat. They eventually arrive at Lacuna and discover that it's beautiful. There's a cool market and festivals going on for a god that they worship named the Child of Embers. They're hoping for his return. Hint, hint. Skip forward again, and Arnaud has made a secret deal with Hugo to try to get his help to kill the Count, who rules over this island. Amicia stops it, and Arnaud is arrested. The Count and Countess decide to welcome Amicia and Hugo into their home and give them a place to stay. They want to go and explore the island and meet up with Sophia. She helps them make their way to a map in the center of the island that has the Order's markings on it. They follow one of the paths that lead to a ceremony being held. It feels like it's straight out of Eyes Wide Shut. Very cult-like, but I really like the visuals here. This is where they discover that there was a previous child that lived here that also held the macula. His name was Basilius, and he had a protector named Aelia. This gave them a lead, and eventually they go and check the chapel. Aelia had been imprisoned here for going against the Order. They then make their way back to the center of the map and find a passage going underground. This is where the Order had trapped Basilius in an attempt to stop the plague from happening. Aelia had died before she could get to him and free him. This caused Basilius to give in to the macula, which eventually unleashed the Justinian plague. They realized that the dreams that Hugo was having were brought on by the macula to bring him here into its own domain. Amicia and Hugo return to the castle to tell Lucas and Beatrice, who had just arrived, about what's going on. Amicia is then brought into another room by the Count, where he attempts to kill her. It's revealed that he made up all the Child of Embers stuff, and that they have to kill all of Hugo's family. That way they can adopt him because they're fucking insane. One thing leads to another, and you end up outside, where you watch the Countess kill your mother. Amicia is cut down and injured, and Hugo witnesses it all. He lets all hell break loose and kills the Countess and destroys a bunch of the island. They make it back to the boat and start sailing away when they're caught up to by the Count. Amicia almost dies, and Hugo thinks that she really is dead. That's when he gives in to the macula completely. Amicia and Lucas make their way to the center of a crazy event called the Nebula, caused by the macula, which is caused by Hugo giving into it. It is here that Hugo tells Amicia to kill him to stop the plague. It's a very sad and very dramatic moment, and I highly recommend anyone listening to this to go play it. Even if you've now heard how it all goes, I've left out a lot of context building and a lot of really cool plot points. There's also a post-credit scene that hints at a future modern-day version of the macula, so I'm really hoping that we get to explore that. Anyway, I ended up with the platinum trophies for both games, and I really believe that this is a must-play series. I can't explain to you the amount of emotion I felt while playing these games. Every line is written carefully, and the characters all have real reasons for what they're doing and why they're doing it. This has quickly and easily become one of my favorite series of all time. Thank you guys for watching. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I'm going to be recording in a very different style for the next few videos. I really want to record more gameplay and have more of my reactions to certain moments. I think it could be more engaging and less scripted. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and happy hunting.